Yo, what's going on everyone? Guiding Light here back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk to you guys about a topic which I noticed was kind of going around the first descendant community right now. And that is whether or not the first descendant will last. I hear a lot of people talking about the drop rates in this game and how there's really not much to do once you reach a certain point. And there's been a lot of people who have even stopped playing the game due to this. Now, I want to talk to you guys about why I think the first Descendant is actually a very, very good game, and sort of why I think it does actually have a good chance of lasting quite a while. This will be a bit of a review of the game and also where I think the game is headed or where I would like to see it head and why I think it will last. Now, keep in mind, guys, I've actually been playing this game since the alpha and the beta. I've got a decent amount of playtime throughout the alpha and the beta, and I've got about 600 hours played in the full game as well. So I have almost every Descendant unlocked, every Ultimate unlocked. I've beat every mission in the game, and I've got a lot of my Descendants already pretty much maxed out. I have reached a point in the game where I don't really need to play necessarily anymore. And that's sort of what I want to start by talking about. Once you reach a certain point in this game, you will start to realize not only is it very repetitive, but you will sort of reach a plateau for damage where all of a sudden the missions they go from being challenging to actually quite enjoyable to sort of like a cakewalk. You can almost one hit all the enemies. You can defeat bosses in only 10 or 15 seconds, and it sort of takes the thrill of the challenge out of the game and sort of just leaves you with a feeling of grinding and just being super repetitive. Now, that's something I think you have to be ready for when even starting the game. You have to understand it's an MMO. You're going to be replaying a lot of missions. You're going to redo a lot of stuff, and you're going to have to go for those drops. That's just how the game is designed. And if that's not for you, then maybe just play through the main story and then stop playing. That's perfectly fine. I honestly thought the main story of the game was very enjoyable. I was extremely surprised by the storyline. I wasn't even really expecting one when I got on the game. And to be fair, given the fact that this game is completely free to play, there is no reason why you couldn't go through the main story, have a great time, and just never play again and honestly rate the game like 4 stars out of 5 just based off that experience alone. I didn't really see a problem with that. Now, after you get through the main story, this is where things get a little weird because I think they could have done a better job at explaining how to level up the characters, the purpose of creating these builds and stuff like that. You're kind of just thrown into the end game and they say, hey, you have access to all these hard level missions, you have access to all these hard level bosses. We're not really going to tell you how to make that easier. We're just going to make it basically impossible. And you can use the matchmaking features to get yourself through that. And to be fair, I liked that system. It did allow me to learn a lot about how the game operated. And in my opinion, I like this route as an experienced player because it gave me a sort of like a tutorial of how do I get stronger? How do I make these builds? What is the right process? The only thing with that is that I had to figure it out all on my own. If you're not a super experienced player, if you didn't play the beta, if you haven't ever played an MMO in the past, you're probably gonna kind of just be stuck at this point and wonder why is anybody even playing this game? It's very odd. That's sort of how I was at first until learning how to create builds and figuring out the actual process of how the game worked. So I think they could have done a slightly better job at sort of explaining that. And there's definitely a big population of the community who's gotten to that point of the game and said, you know what, I've had enough. I don't even know what's really under what I'm doing. And the few descendants, few weapons I have tried to go after, the drops just don't seem to pop up. And that's where a lot of people I notice start to quit the game. And that's fine in my opinion. But I think if the developers did a little bit of a better job at explaining that process, that a lot of players may not have left. Now, from here, you will sort of be in the end game, and you'll notice that you have to start all the hard level missions and that you have a few bosses to take down and there's not really much left for you to do at this point. Now, this is where the end game farming sort of starts, and you're going to start to say, okay, well, I guess I can start leveling up descendants, I can start unlocking new characters. And then you start to this process out, and you end up repeating the same missions over and over and over again. Now, in my opinion, this was actually pretty fun at first for the first couple hundred hours of doing it. And then you get a few new descendants unlocked, you get a few new weapons unlocked, you're able to get stronger. You finally maybe get your first energy activator and crystallization catalyst started and you'll start to create your builds and sort of understand how this works as you begin to get stronger. Now, this is actually a pretty good part of the game, I think, because it allows you to go around to all the different descendants, You can test out a bunch of various different weapons. You can see how much stronger you've become. And this is why I actually kind of like repeating the missions, because you'll go into a mission that you did when you first started the game. You'll notice, dang, this mission's kind of tough to get through. But then you'll go back through maybe with a different descendant, or you'll have another, new ultimate weapon that you've leveled up, and you'll go back into that mission and you'll clear it 3 times as fast and say, dang, look how much stronger I've gotten. It was all kind of worth it. And it's a lot more fun now that I can, tear through these hard level missions. Now, this part of the game is extremely fun, and you can do this across all of the different descendants. It offers a lot of different play styles due to the fact that there's all these different abilities, all these different mods you can slot in. And as you start to get these drops and create these builds, you notice, dang, this game has a lot to offer. And there's just so many different options of things that you can do and all the customizations you can make. This is a part of the game I think is really, really good. And when you compare it to other MMOs, they've actually done a really good job at the build crafting and the various different weapons. Now, in my opinion, they need to add a few more weapons. There's really only like 5 or 6 legendaries, maybe not even, that are like really, really well worth leveling up. And then from there, you're left with maybe 4 or 5 ultimates that are also very good. Now, like I said, guys, this game, you have to realize it's sort of just starting. This is the beginning of the first descendant. So you have to consider everything that's in the game right now as essentially being the foundation of the game. We're still actually sort of in the beta. If you guys played the beta, you'll notice that the state of the game right now is actually the exact same as it was in the beta. The only things they've added are Luna and Ultimate Valby. Other than that, it's the exact same base game as the beta. They haven't really made any changes. And yes, we may have like Esmo and Kyle. There's a few descendants they added with the launch of the game, but the content, the core content has always been the same throughout the alpha, the beta, and now even the full game itself. So this gets me into where the game, I think, needs to head in the future to keep the players dedicated, and even to make some of the players that have left also come back and say, dang, maybe I was wrong about that game and I should give it another go, especially given that they've already beaten the main story. So if you guys have been playing since the beta, you'll notice that the game has essentially always been the same. You go into these missions, you farm out the characters, you get stronger and stronger, you take it into bosses, you just continue to create builds for each character you play, and that's sort of the whole point of the game. Now, although I do enjoy this, I think once you've gotten to a point where you've put in 400 and 500 hours, and you have, most of the descendants unlocked, most of the ultimates unlocked, and you have 3 or 4 of your favorite characters all maxed out, and you can, clear out all these missions, you're left with almost nothing to do. You continue to go into the same missions, you continue to farm for these drops that may or may not pop up, but you notice you get to a point where you're so strong and you question, why am I even really going for these drops? I'm already strong enough to defeat all these missions. I'm already strong enough to take down most of these bosses in 30 seconds. And on top of that, I've already maxed out the 3 or 4 descendants, which are my favorite characters. So what am I playing for? Well, this is actually where I think the first descendant actually has a major problem. Once you've reached this point around master rank 18 to 20, you'll notice that all of your favorite weapons are maxed, all of your favorite descendants are maxed, and most of these missions, they become very, very boring due to the fact that you can tear right through them. And you're also farming for drops that just seem to never really pop up. And even when they do pop up, you question why you got them, because you have to then essentially de-rank yourself from your favorite build to start using some new weapon, which ends up being under leveled because it drops so low, and you just end up starting the whole process over again, where you power yourself up, and then all of a sudden the missions just become a cakewalk all over again. So this is where a major problem lies in the first Descendant, I think, in the longevity of it, and especially in the end game. Now, this is where I'm hoping things change in Season 1. Now, we're only about a week or 2 away from the new season launching, and I've already heard a lot of speculation about a lot of content being added into that season. I'm not really going to talk about anything that I've heard, but I will talk about what I expect from the future of this game and what I really, really hope that comes in this next season. Because, in my opinion, if it doesn't live up to my expectations that I'm setting, I do think it's going to be hard for a lot of players who have already put in a few hundred hours to continue playing. Now, I do think they'll still always attract those new players. However, I would really like to see people stick around this game and play it for, a year or two, just because it's such an enjoyable game. I think it has a really good opportunity to have a great community of players that help each other out and just have fun clearing out these missions and creating all these builds. And it is sort of up to the developers at this point to create that experience. Now, over the past few weeks, they have created a lot of quality of life changes that I think sets this game up for a very good future. And all that's left now is for them to have a flawless season launch. Now, the things that I really come to expect in the new season are obviously, one or two new descendants. That's already confirmed. We already know we're always going to be getting new descendants. And to be fair, there's already so many descendants in the game that it takes hundreds of hours to get them all maxed out and to unlock them all. And even the most hardcore player is going to struggle to get that finish, even up to this point in the game. So even though there's already like 15 descendants, they don't really need to add any more. They're always going to just to keep that flow there, and that's good. But what I really, really need to see happen with this game is for them to add some sort of repeatable activity, which is actually challenging. Unfortunately, all of the intercept battles and all of the boss fights are extremely easy, or they just have a giant flaw where you're using the matchmaking feature, and it's not that the boss is hard, it's just that it's hard to complete when you're playing with random people. What I would like to see is for them to come out with what I would call like a dungeon, I guess, or like a miniature raid, where maybe you, instead of going in with 4 players, maybe you go in with like 6 or 8 players. And these activities, they need to take like 45 minutes. They need to be multiple stages. They need to have enemies which are so difficult that even the most maxed out descendant with 10 crystallization catalysts still struggles to take them down. Now, I really love replaying missions, and I really actually do love the way the builds work and all the different characters and most of the weapons in this game. The problem is, we don't really have anywhere to take these items and actually have a challenging experience anymore. That was what really kept me hooked on this game, was having the continued challenge of going through these missions, but once you're maxed out in damage, there's really no challenge left. And so this is where I would like to see them put in a 6 to 8 player activity, which does take 30 to 45 minutes to complete. On when you finish it up, you might get like a million. You might have the chance of getting like a million gold drop or a million Kuiper drop, or you're gonna have like all the drops will still be there. I don't want them to have specific drops for each dungeon. What I want is for the dungeons to actually offer any drop in the game, but at a random chance. So as you're going through these dungeons, there might be little rooms off to the side where you can open up some chests. These chests, instead of just dropping, drop area specific loot like they've had that system in the past, these chests would be offered the ability to drop anything in the game. So maybe you go into one of these dungeons, it takes you 45 minutes to complete. You don't know what you're going to get, but at the end all of a sudden you get this ultimate code that you've been hunting for weeks, and you had no idea you were going to get it. What these dungeons needs to offer is the ability to drop items in which you have never unlocked before. So that would be the incentive to completing these dungeons, is that you're guaranteed an item which you've never had. So either a mod, a weapon, a descendant part, it has to drop items which we've never had. Another thing in which I think they should add is a guaranteed loot drop system. Now, this is something that the developers have already confirmed that they're working on. There's people that have run missions hundreds and hundreds of times and they still haven't gotten the drops that they're looking for. And so they're working on a way to have guaranteed loot. Now, what I think they need to do in order to set this system up is make it so that you need to get a certain amount of amorphous materials to unlock the item you want at a guaranteed drop. So let's say you go into the Devour boss fight and you're looking for the SMO part, but it never seems to drop for you due to the fact that it has a 3% drop rate. What they need to make a system for is where you can go into the Devour boss fight, and instead of having to turn in one amorphous material, they need to make it so that you can turn in, say, like a pack of 20 amorphous materials at once, and that will guarantee you the drop. That I think would be really, really nice, because then instead of having to get the drops at a random chance, you could just run the mission 10 times, get 20 amorphous materials stacked. Then when you go into the boss, you're going to guarantee yourself the drop, but you have to turn in 20 amorphous materials at once instead of just trying to randomly roll for one of them at each time. Now, the last thing I would like to see them add to this game to make me play it, and I think for the community to continue on for months and months on, is to add some sort of a mini game. Now, I don't really know exactly what this mini game would entail. It could be endless waves. It could be even structured sort of like the dungeons I was explaining, but they need to have a mini game where you can go in and try to set a high score. And they need to also add a leaderboard with that mini game so that we can sort of compete with each other to see who has cleared it out the fastest and who has gotten the furthest in it. Once they add these systems into the game, I think it will actually add a sense of competitiveness, and it will actually give us a reason to level up our characters and a reason to have all of these builds set up. Now, one more thing I could say is that maybe somewhere down the road they could have a PvP system, but honestly, I kind of like the fact that there isn't one in this game, and it allows for a better balance and a better flow. And I've heard a lot of people talking about trading as well, and although I do think that would be cool, I think having just the guaranteed drop rate where you trade in 20 or 30 amorphous materials at once to get the guaranteed items that you want would be better than trading, in my opinion. But that's just it for me. That's gonna where I'm gonna leave this video at. That's where I really, really hope this game heads in the future, because with these changes, these very, very small changes, I honestly think this game could last up to a year or two, so long as they keep up with the seasonal model and releasing that content every season. Now, I would really like to see what your guys' opinion is on this, and for you guys to leave your own ideas down in the comments. But other than that, that's it for me in this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.